Hello, everybody. Welcome to our last Momentum workshop of the year. I am so thrilled to have my dear friend and brilliant astrologer and businesswoman, Jennifer Racioppi, here with us today. Jen is every entrepreneur, at least in the greater New York area's favorite astrologer, not to mention those all across the country and the world. What's amazing about Jen is that she's this unique combination of complete bookworm, and she's so knowledgeable about astrology, business, evidence-based science, psychology, health, success, well-being. She's every bit as much the health coach as she is like a business astrologer to people who are earning millions of dollars a year. So she's this wonderful enigma. We met because when I launched my website, jennyblake.me, many years ago in 2013, I don't know how you found it, Jen, but Jen stumbled upon it and she just said, "You look like an interesting person. Can I read your chart?" And I gave her my info and she did. We just became instant friends and have kept in touch ever since. Every time I get a reading from her, it's just spot on, so accurate, so helpful. And more than anything, I respect Jen's emphasis on resilience and doing things your own way, following your own rhythms. She does a lot of work with moon cycles. She's been doing that work since she was in her early 20s, and how to run a business while keeping in tune with the stars. And interestingly enough, even today's Google logo, maybe in honor of this webinar, is on the Gemini meteor shower. So it's this whole like 8-panel sequence of going through the stars. And so that's just perfectly timed for today's conversation. Without further ado, Jennifer Racioppi, everybody.
Hi guys, and what an honor to be here. So I met Jen. I mean, that was years ago, and the way that I actually came to find you was through your content calendar, your editorial calendar that you created as a free downloadable whatever offering. One of my assistants, someone on my team, had brought it to my attention. She's like, "I think you should use this," and it said "Made by Jenny Blake." So I was like, "Who's Jenny Blake?" And I went and I saw your website, and I was just so blown away by the awesomeness of your free resources and the awesomeness of like how you curated your brand. I was like, I've got to meet this woman. She's fascinating and like amazing. So so I reached out to her and we did her chart, and that's how we met. But it's so cool to be here with you guys. As Jenny said, I work at the intersection of astrology, positive psychology, and wellness. And I serve high-performing business people, be it entrepreneurs or CEOs, some celebrities. But what I really love more than anything is working with people shaping their own destiny based on who they are, however they see fit in a leadership role. So I'm going to start by just talking through the basics of what astrology is. You know, the round robin we did with everyone coming on and just saying where they are. You know, we have someone here with their birth chart who knows their birth chart exceptionally well, all the way down to, I know some astrology. So I think what will be really helpful, and you guys tell me if this resonates with you, is if I just give a brief overview of what astrology is, even the zodiac, you know, how we move through the zodiac in astrology, and then break it down further from there. How does that sound? Does that resonate? Okay. So astrology is, and I'm using Western astrology. So I'm using a form of astrology that we use here in the West, and that's different than, say, Vedic astrology or Chinese astrology. And in Western astrology, is, you know, this is the type of astrology where currently the sun's in Sagittarius, right? So it's the sort of astrology we're most typically using in a cultural context. But I like to differentiate it just because there are so many different forms and styles of astrology. And in Western astrology, we're using a geocentric view of the earth, right? So we are actually viewing the stars from how they appear to our eyes on earth, not actually where they are. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. Like, you know, in astrology, I'm going to say the sun's in this sign, and then the sun moves in that sign, and then the sun moves in this sign. from a heliocentric perspective, the sun doesn't move, right? Like we go around the sun. But from an astrological perspective, we're looking at how the cosmos appear from the earth, and we're deriving meaning from that, which is one of the places where astrology was once really revered as a form of astronomy. Took a deviation, became less of a science and more of a pseudoscience. For those of us here, I'm forgetting your name, but the psychologist here who trained very classically in psychology, where they will say this sort of stuff doesn't really apply. From a pure evidence-based science perspective, I totally understand it, because what we're looking at is how we're relating to our view of the cosmos, not actually how the cosmos are breaking down. And up until around the time of the Renaissance, it was really believed that what we saw was what was real, right? That there was no optical illusion at play. And around that time, astrology was really guiding massive decisions in politics and society and health and wellness. And with the advent of science coming afoot, it kind of took a backstage and was pushed off. It moved out of the front and center stage of how decisions were being made and was more of like the sideshow at the fair. Does that make sense? And where we're at right now is a renaissance. We're really at a spiritual renaissance. We're at a time where the processions of the equinox are moving in such a way that we're moving into what we'll call the age of Aquarius, where as a society, we're reacclimating ourselves to ancient practices as a way of healing. We're seeing the limits of purely, pure and enlightened thought. We're seeing the limits of just evidence-based science, where it's gotten us. And as a culture, there's a resurgence in curiosity around how we belong to the cosmos, where we came from, and I would say a lot of non-evidence-based science in the form of healing, certainly in the esoteric worlds and metaphysical studies, of which astrology truly belongs. What's so cool about this moment is that it's back in the cultural zeitgeist in such a big way. And because of that, we have so much evidence that astrology works. And it might not be peer-reviewed, evidence-based science, but it's certainly evidence no less. And that's really how I like to approach astrology, is through this idea that we can try this for ourselves. We can treat it like an experiment and see what sorts of results we get. I know when Jenny first started learning astrology, may I share a little bit about? Yeah. So she got really excited about it after she learned her chart, and then started looking at other people's charts and like putting it all together and like garnering all this evidence of how it works, right?
I was so skeptical. Jen was the first time I ever got my chart read. And then I ended up reading 100 charts, absolutely convinced that this was the biggest shortcut. I was even doing career cosmos sessions where I would cut through hours and hours of what we would do in a career coaching session by just looking at their chart. And I could say, are you currently working with people? No, you absolutely need to be. This is the key. And they'd be like, wow, thank you so much. We'd have aha moments in minutes. And speaking of cultural zeitgeist, another secret but fun piece of news is Jen's working on a book called Cosmic Health. And there's just been a tremendous amount of interest from publishers. So it's very exciting. Jen's going to be really on the cutting edge of this movement and just this resurgence, because obviously it's been around 4,000 years, as you said, Jen.
Yeah, it's been around 4,000 years, and now we're just like reopening our minds to how this works. And so what I'm going to suggest today is I'm going to give you guys a lot of information. I'm going to bring you through the 12 zodiac signs. For some of you, we'll take an in-depth look at your chart, perhaps for all of you, if that's what you desire. And then you guys take it and run with it and see how it makes sense for you. I always say success is knowing who you are and being who you are. And that is a quote I've pulled from Warren Bennis, who's a leadership expert. And he says leadership is knowing who you are and being who you are. And I've just replaced leadership with success. And when we take when we start to author our own lives, or we start to really step into who we are, our quirks, our our brilliance, our strengths, and honoring our weaknesses. There's a lot of to put in the name of this program, momentum, that becomes available to us in our lives, because we're not fighting who we are. We're not fighting our innate patterns, our innate rhythms. And there can be a lot of momentum that comes from that, but it has to make sense for you. So I always just say, never give your power away. Never let someone tell you who you are, or like never let a divination tool supersede your own self-knowledge. But when we use it in conjunction with our self-explorations and our development as leaders, it can be really provoking and a powerful tool of affirmation and support. And then the other way I really like to use astrology, aside it's just being a shortcut into understanding who you are and what you need to thrive, is to start to tune into the cycles and the rhythms that guide our lives. And when we start to tune into the cycles and the rhythms that guide our lives, we can, sometimes we don't have to exert ourselves so much, because we're tuning into the natural flow of things. We're doing things in timing, in order that coincide with what the cosmic dance is doing. And when we have that synergy, there can be a surge of energy. There can be a surge of momentum that might otherwise not be there. And that's really the sweet spot, I think, of where we can use astrology. One, as a shortcut into knowing ourselves and being ourselves, to stepping into greater success and leadership based on self-ownership and self-possession. And then two, really starting to understand that we're not responsible for all the momentum in our lives, that we can actually tune into the cycles and the rhythms of nature. And when we do, there's a term one of my colleagues uses called forward vector motion, which is a physics term, when something catches momentum and starts to spin. But she uses it in terms of cycle syncing. When we can sync our cycles with the cycles of the cosmos, there can be a lot of forward vector motion, meaning things can really accelerate in a powerful way that doesn't deplete our adrenals and doesn't run us down. Does that make sense? Any questions on any of this before I go any further? All good? Okay. So there are some really exciting things happening in the sky right now. I will say 2018 was a year, I'm going to throw out a fancy astrological term that may not make sense just yet, but it will by the time we're done. There was a lot of retrograde activity in 2018. So for those of you who don't know what retrograde means, retrograde is an optical illusion. When a planet goes retrograde, it's said to go backwards. Again, coming back to this concept that we're seeing astrology from a geocentric perspective. What that really means is that from the vantage point on planet Earth, it looks like the planet's going backwards. The planet's not going backwards, right? It's an optical illusion, but based on how we see it on Earth, it appears as though it's going backwards. What's really happening is it's in a part of its elliptical pattern, how it's going around the sun, where it's just slowing down. It just looks like it's slowing down, and the Earth looks like it's going faster. We're in a part of our pattern where it's like keeping up the average pace around the sun, where another planet's, because all the planets have their own elliptical circle, or just at a time in that circle where it looks like they're going backwards. So that's the little bit of science around it. But the application is that it means that planet isn't in communication the way that it normally is. So we don't have that planet's full power at our fingertips. So most notably, we talk a lot in astrology around Mercury being retrograde. Mercury is the planet that rules communication. And because Mercury's proximity to the sun, Mercury is going around the sun three-ish times a year, whereas the Earth's only going around the sun once. So Mercury goes retrograde 3 to 4 times a year. And when Mercury goes retrograde, that's often a time when there can be technological snafus, or our communication isn't as strong as it normally would be. It's generally speaking a time when we just need to slow down and listen. Now, I happen to love Mercury retrogrades, like love with a capital L. Don't always love every aspect of Mercury retrograde.
I'll just say Jen's always the astrologer that everyone goes to, like, Jen, it's Mercury retrograde. Can I still do XYZ, and then she's talking sense into everybody of why she loves it. Like she's a rare breed that is actually loving Mercury retrograde.
Well, I just think that in a world where we're so like results oriented and speed oriented, Mercury retrograde is this opportunity to slow down and listen and hear and course correct. So Mercury retrograde periods, I think, are great times to pay attention to what needs to get changed and what needs to get fixed. In any year, like in 2019, Mercury will go retrograde. I believe it's 3 times. In any year, we'll have 3 to 4 Mercury retrogrades. It's really common. But in 2018, in addition to our Mercury retrogrades, we had 2 other inner planets go retrograde. Mars was retrograde. We're all in the Northern Hemisphere, correct? No one's here from Australia? Mars went retrograde all summer. So from June 26th through the end of August, Mars, the planet of action, was just in a void. So this summer was really hard from an astrological perspective to get things done. And then right after Mars straightened out his path, October 6th through November 16th, Venus, the planet of love and beauty and values and relationships, she went retrograde. And so we just came out of that really intense Mars retrograde. I think this summer there was like 5 planets retrograde at once. There were 3 eclipses. It was intense. And then we got into a little bit later in the fall, and we still had a lot of really heavy retrograde activity. So 2018 was a slow year. And we're just coming out of that now. We're just wrapping that up. And I just say that we're like these next 3 weeks between now and the end of the year, it's like really 2 weeks at this point, we're in a little bit of a sweet spot where there can actually be a lot of movement. Now I know it's the holidays, and so who's doing anything? You know, probably not a lot of things on your to-do list that are like really strategic and hard, like launching and leading and all that stuff. Probably not so much right now. But it's just to say that we're in a moment where we're in one of the most productive moments of the entire year. And as we look towards 2019 and what's to come, we actually have a nice little respite from what 2018 was, because we will not have that kind of heavy retrograde activity again in 2019. So 2019, I'm going to say 2 more planets, and then I'll explain what they are. And I'll give this a segue, and then we'll move through the signs. But we have Saturn, the planet of discipline and structure. Saturn's the taskmaster. Saturn's kind of like the school principal of the zodiac. Wherever Saturn is where we're doing the heavy, heavy, heavy work. And he is going to continue to travel through Capricorn in all of 2019. And so that's really makes 2019 a continued year of laying foundations, business foundations, foundations in our life for where we want to go next. And Saturn loves Capricorn. He rules Capricorn, so it's a nice placement for him to be. In 2020, this is like 1 year later, Saturn actually gets really activated by some other planets also in Capricorn that we'll start to see foreshadowing of come March and April of 2019, but we really won't feel it big time till 2020. And so 2020 is like a watershed year, massive for humanity, for business. Obviously here in the States, we have a big political election coming up. It's a heavy year, but it's a heavy year astrologically as well. But I say this just to say that 2019 is like an acclimation year. It's almost like in yoga, when we do deep back bends, before we go into forward bends, we have to neutralize. And I would say 2018 was like a lot of forward bending. 2020 is going to be a lot of back bending. And so 2019 is almost like a year where there's way more neutralization happening between the intense movements. Does that make sense?
Yes, Jen, this is Jenny. When you say forward bending and back bending, do you also mean that as themes? Like when you talk about 2020 and you use the term back bending, do those relate, or is it just keeping on the yoga analogy of like two almost more extreme modes of being and then the neutral prep year?
Mainly two extreme modes of being and then the neutral prep. But I would say that this year was a year of forward bending. It was a year of trying to touch our toes. It was a year of really like surrendering forward and letting gravity pull us down, and a lot of release. And 2020 will be a year where we have to invert and go back and stretch and expand and defy gravity in a whole different way. So primarily as two extreme modes of being, but I think that the deeper analogy is applies as well. And so with that in mind, we're really looking at 2019 as a year of neutralization, as a year of really making sense of the intense forward bending we just did as we prepare for what's going to, the intense backward bending that's inevitable for all of us as a culture. And to couple with that, Jupiter, the planet of good luck, good fortune, and abundance, is in Sagittarius. And Jupiter loves to be in Sagittarius. He rules Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a sign that's all about growth and expansion, big picture vision and philosophy. And so this is a year to not just build the foundation with Saturn in Capricorn, it's also a year to really get behind what you believe, what your vision is, what your desires are, and where you want to go from here. I think things like international travel may feel easier or more enticing. I think that the blogosphere might blow up with Jupiter and Sagittarius this next year. We just came out of a time when Jupiter was in Scorpio, and Scorpio is a sign that reveals secrets and power dynamics and relates to sexuality. And we just came out of a really full year of the Me Too movement, which Harry Weinstein's, the allegations against him came out right when Jupiter moved into Scorpio. So Jupiter, being a planet that expands, moved into Scorpio, the sign of sexuality and secrets. The whole Me Too movement was born. Now Jupiter has moved into Sagittarius, a sign that rules publishing and international travel and big picture thinking and philosophy and theology. So it'll be really interesting to see what comes next. But Saturn and Jupiter are our inner outer planets. They're not quite the inner planets. They don't travel super close to the sun, but they're not quite the outer planets. They're not out near the Kuiper Belt. They're not out distant from Earth. And so Jupiter and Saturn rule our social consciousness. Saturn's our discipline, our focus. Jupiter is how we expand what we believe. And as we're planning our businesses and as we're planning our lives as leaders, it's nice to know what's up in the social sphere, because our businesses are service driven, right? Or they're solving a problem, or they're hoping to tap into the zeitgeist of what's going on in culture. So our ideas catch fire, which is why I bring it up. As business people, it's important to know where we're best adept at putting our work and our efforts, and how we're going to grow the biggest and the fastest with the least amount of effort. And with Saturn in Capricorn, it's really about strategy, brass tacks planning, foundations, business structure, LLC versus S Corp, or LLC versus C Corp, or making sure our books are really in order, making sure the foundations of our business are solid, our team structures are great, how we pay ourselves, right? Like, how we pay ourselves is a big deal, like making sure you're paying yourself, all the things, team structure, SOPs, standard operating procedures for your business, the details that make your business work. And then Jupiter in Sagittarius is, what do we stand for? How do we communicate our ideas? How do our ideas catch fire? So evangelizing thought leadership and unique personal perspectives. And I think that those are two really good places to put our energy and focus as we think about business goals for 2019. January begins with eclipses. So eclipses are kind of like the Super Bowl of the new moon and full moon facets. Like they're basically new moons and full moons, but very amped up versions of them. So the year kicks off almost on a startling note, I will say, with the eclipses coming in. right in January. Eclipses, I say, are like sitting in a room where all the furniture is set, and then someone coming in turns off the lights, rearranges the furniture, and then asks you to like find your seat with a blindfold on. It can feel very disorienting. It's like, what just happened? Everything just changed. So we're starting the year off with the eclipses. So I will just say, as you come into your planning for 2019, keep space. Don't, keep some space in your month of January to digest what's evolving and unfolding. Allow yourself to see changes that you didn't think you needed to see. Bend, be adaptable, be resilient, be gritty, be curious, stay in the seat of the observer. And then by the time we get to February, you'll know, even the last eclipse in January is January 21st. I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure it's January 21st. And then the subsequent weeks after that, things are going to start to like calm down and settle in. So February is like a fast month. There are almost no retrograde planets. And you can get a lot done in February. So be patient at the start of the year. Give yourself space for January to potentially feel like it needs to, whatever that means. Keep the long view and just be prepared, because I think February is going to be extremely productive. And that's just like a glimpse into what's going on cosmically for all of us. But before I go any further, I think it's really great to just talk about the zodiac. Do you have a question, Jenny?
Oh no, it just was popping on. Thank you. Zodiac is great. And maybe also how you run your business according to the moon would be fascinating.
Yeah.
Briefly. Yeah, thank you.
Totally. So the zodiac is, the part of astrology that I think everyone knows. Like we all know our sun sign to some degree, or some characteristics of what that sun sign may be. But I think it's great to just get the refresher of how the signs work and their relationship to one another. So in astrology, traditional astrology views the spring equinox, which is when the sun moves into Aries, as the first of the new year. So the astrological new year, some consider it when the sun moves into Capricorn, which is what will happen at the winter solstice on the 21st of December. But most astrology views the astrological new year being the moment that the sun moves into Aries, which is the spring equinox. So Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. Do we have any Aries in here? Anyone here in Aries? Okay. So Aries kicks things off. It's ruled by Mars. It's the sign that's really about action, making things happen. It's a very assertive sign. And think about it, it's the ram. It's getting in there and it's like driving these fresh beginnings. It's why we get spring fever. That feeling of like something's got to change, or it's time for newness, freshness. It's really the influence of Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac. So it's cardinal. Cardinal means it initiates a season. It's fire, meaning it's assertive, it's action oriented. It's ruled by Mars, which is a masculine planet. We don't have to think of it binary in terms of gender, just yang in terms of action oriented. And it starts things. And then from Aries, we move into Taurus. And what I want you guys to start to understand is that every sign other than Aries, because Aries is the first, every sign is going to complete the last. So to start to see the interdependence between all the signs. Aries, the first sign, it initiates. Well, then what comes next? Taurus. Taurus is fixed, meaning it stabilizes. Earth, meaning it's grounded. So whereas Aries comes in and is like, hey, let's get things started. Taurus is like, okay, let's stabilize and let's make sure everything is grounded and rooted and taken care of. Now, Aries, great ideas person, not necessarily the best follow through, right? So Aries leaders, they're really wonderful generators of ideas, and they do really well when they have someone to delegate it to. Like, oh, I just got this idea, like take it and run with it. Because Aries will come up with a lot of things and not necessarily want to finish them. Taurus, on the other hand, comes in, is like, let's stabilize this. Let's make sure that this is nurtured. Let's make sure that this is grounded. And let's make sure that everyone's taken care of. Is there enough paper in the machine? Is there, have we paid our bills? Does everyone feel okay? Like, did you eat enough? Let's make sure we have enough food. Nourishment. So I will say that the key word for Taurus is nourishment. Aries doesn't care if you're nourished. Aries just wants to get it started. Taurus comes in to make sure it's grounded, it's fed, it's watered, it has a long-term future. So it's fixed earth ruled by Venus, Venus being the planet of femininity and our personal values, really. When I say femininity, I mean the yin qualities, not necessarily binary gender terms. And then if Taurus is here about stability and making sure everything's safe and sound, in comes Gemini, and Gemini is mutable air. So fire is our spirit, earth is our body, air is our intellect and our mind. So Gemini comes in and is like, okay, we've got it started. We've planted some seeds. Everything's watered. Everything's nurtured. Now can we cross-pollinate some ideas? Can we take a little bit of this and marry it with this? Can we move here? Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we mix this up a little bit? So whereas Taurus gets fixed and grounded, Gemini comes in to push the boundaries and start to push new ideas out, right? Because we don't want to be so grounded. We have to continue to be generative. And that's how the zodiac works. So Gemini's ruled by Mercury, it's planet of communication. So Gemini is here to start to communicate. And if we think about the seasons where we have spring fever into the nourishment of Taurus season, and then what comes in June? Graduations, weddings, all these things where suddenly it's like backyard barbecue season. And if we're in the Northern Hemisphere, and it's really about cross-pollinating ideas, socializing. It's a big word for Gemini, to be social. And so after we go through our really social season of Gemini, what comes next? Well, the sun moves into Cancer. Cancer initiates a season. When the sun moves into Cancer, we have summer solstice, which is really exciting. And Cancer is very much around protecting our home, protecting our families. If Gemini is really about like, everyone's welcome, Cancer is like, well, no, everyone's not welcome. No, why would everyone be welcome? This is for our tight-knit community. This is for our inner circle. This is for our family. This is for, I want my people to feel safe. I want my people to feel secure. I want my resources to feel safe. I want my resources to feel secure. So it's cardinal. It starts a season. It's water. It's emotional. It's ruled by the moon. So after we do safety and security with those we love, what comes next? Leo. Leo's like, okay, enough of the safety and security. Now let's shine. Let's play. So Leo is the sign of the zodiac. That's also fire. So we're coming back to fire. So it's spirited, it's big, it's bold, it's ruled by the sun, it's fixed, it stabilizes the season. But Leo is really here to teach us to stand tall, to put our shoulders back, to lead with an open heart. Open-heartedness is a big deal for Leo. It's very much around play and leadership and inspiring others to be their boldest and their brightest. Leos get the reputation that they're attention-seeking. In my experience, it's very rare to find attention-seeking Leos. Most Leos I know are slightly shy and bashful, but they tend to attract attention anyway, almost like August. It can't go by without being noticed. It's probably one of the most fun months of the year. But it's not necessarily screaming for attention. It's just August, and the same is true for Leos. They tend to attract quite a bit of attention, but not necessarily always because they want it. So after we have the fun and playful and the bold and the bright season of Leo, the sun moves into Virgo. And Virgo, unlike Leo, which is like, let's go play, let's go be big, let's go be bold, Virgo comes in and it's like, let's organize. Let's systematize. Let's make things healthy. Let's get things in order. And that's like that last week in August when the back to school fever kicks in and everyone's getting organized again and the kids are going back to school. It's like so Virgo. And Virgo is mutable. It prepares us for a seasonal shift. It's earth, just like Taurus. So it's worried about the practicalities of life. It's ruled by Mercury, just like Gemini. So it's a little bit mental, very strategic. And Virgo stems from the root word virgin, which means unto self, which is a time to return to self. It's a time to come home to self. It's time to be like, all right, enough. We did the Gemini, we did the Cancer, we did the Leo. Now let's come back to ourselves. So it's very much around health, health, organization, systems, and work. Virgo's all about service. And then the sun moves into Libra, and Libra is the sign of relationships and balance. Libra's cardinal. It starts a season. When the sun moves into Libra, we have the fall equinox in the north or the spring equinox in the south. And if Virgo is all around the details and service and work, Libra comes in for all about balance, relationships. Virgo was back to self. Libra comes in as like, but let's do this in partnership. Let's do this in tandem. Libra's air. It's cardinal. It's ruled by Venus, so it likes things to be beautiful. But really what Libra's here to do is bring justice. It's a sign that's all about justice, balance, harmony, things, making things efficacious. And from there, the sun moves into Scorpio. And Scorpio is like, enough of this fairness, enough of this justice, enough of this balance, over it. Let's get dark, let's get deep, let's get real. Let's talk about things no one else talks about. Sex, death, taxes are like the three things that like Scorpio is affectionately referred to as knowing and talking about. And it's very much around descending into the darkness and the shadows within, culturally, individually, and being with the stuff people don't talk about. So it's like the antithesis of Libra. It's water, it's fixed, it's ruled by Mars and Pluto. And then from there, we move into Sagittarius season, which is the season we're in now, which is all, I mean, Sagittarius is fire. It's mutable. It prepares us for a seasonal change. It's ruled by Jupiter, who's the planet of good luck, good fortune, and abundance. And it's really about like taking down the boundaries and doing things as we see fit, as we see desirable, as we like, as we want. It's about infectious enthusiasm. And so if Scorpio is about descending into the darkness, well, Sagittarius is about bringing it back to the light. If Scorpio is about going into the shadow, Sagittarius is about not only coming out of the shadow, but seeing the big picture. So we're back into big picture thinking. And this is the sign Jupiter, the planet of good luck, good fortune, and abundance, will travel in all of 2019 until December 3rd, 2019, which is really great. It's great for fire signs. So if you're Aries, Leo, I'm missing a fire sign, forgive me, or Sagittarius, obviously, you're going to have a year that's really, especially if you're a Sagittarius, you're going to have a year that's quite full of opportunity. But it's good for all of us, because after Scorpio was in, Jupiter was in Scorpio, it felt really dark this last year. Like there was a lot of things coming to the surface that were not optimistic, even kind of. So we're coming back into a year where it's going to be easier, I think, astrologically speaking, to see the big picture. It doesn't mean our problems go away. It doesn't mean climate change is fixed and, you know, we don't have societal problems like we do. Of course, we live in a crazy world. So there's no magic pill. I just think that we are more resilient and gritty in the face of it. And then from Sagittarius, we move into Capricorn season, and Capricorn happens when the sun moves into 0 degrees of Capricorn, which is the winter solstice, which will happen December 21st. And if Sagittarius is like, go big or go home, who cares about rules? Just do whatever you want. Capricorn comes in and is like boundaries, structure, determination, organization, systemization. And so he's an earth sign. Cardinal starts a season ruled by Saturn, the planet of discipline and structure, and Capricorns get to business. You know, that's why we have these New Year's resolutions, and we really start to step off into the new year on a fresh foot and a new beginning, to have our best year yet, which lasts all the way until the sun moves into Aquarius. which is, the end of January, during January 21st. And at that point, that's when people are like, wait, what did I say I was going to do? Do I really care about that anymore? Because why? Aquarius is like, enough of this tough love, enough of this hard work. Let's do things our own way. Let's be evolutionary, revolutionary, progressive about how we go about things. Let's disrupt the status quo. And so Aquarius is fixed air, it's intellectual, it's ruled by Uranus, who's an outer planet that's all about like originality and innovation. And Aquarius is really here to make the world a better place. Like if Capricorn's here to get shit done, Aquarius is here to like get shit done. And how do we make this better? How do we make this more humane? How do we make this more progressive? How do we make this Aquarius and design go hand in hand. So Aquarius likes things that are like very innovative when it comes to design as well. And so if Aquarius is an idea sign, we come into the last sign of the zodiac, which is Pisces. And Pisces is all of the signs. So Aquarius isn't just where Capricorn left off, because Capricorn picked up where Sagittarius left off, and Sagittarius picked up where Scorpio left off, and Scorpio picked up where Libra left off, and so forth through the whole zodiac. Pisces comes in and picks up where Aquarius left off, but Pisces is actually the entire zodiac. It is the epitome of oneness. It is everything that's come before it, but it's mutable, meaning it prepares us for change. It's water, meaning it's deeply emotional. It's ruled by Neptune, which is the planet of dreams and mysticism. And it's really here to help us feel, to help us heal, to help us dream. Pisces is a sign that does very well with the intangibles like photography or music or poetry, things where we have a deep sense of emotion, but not through feeling states, through art. It's also mystically driven in many, many, many ways. And so I shared that with you guys just so you get the whole sense of the zodiac. And so the sun, from the vantage point of how we see things on Earth, moves through each of these signs very systematically throughout the year. The moon, to come to Jenny's question, will move through the entire zodiac every single month. Does that make sense? So let me say it again. The sun will go through the entire zodiac once a year. The moon will go through the entire zodiac every single lunation. So the moon is the scout. The moon is really, really, really in the zeitgeist right now and has been for a long time and will be for a long time. The moon relates to our emotional needs. And the moon, because it moves so fast through the solar system, meaning it travels through from the perception of where we are on Earth, it goes through all the zodiac signs. It means that it's constantly rubbing elbows with all the zodiac signs and all the planets every single month. So working with lunar cycles is a great way to expedite our emotional intelligence. It's a great way to expedite our psychological growth. And it's actually a great way to expedite our profitability. Because when we learn to cycle with the moon, we start to cycle a lot faster. And the moon cycle, I won't go into it too much, but just so I say it, it mimics the same cycle as the female reproductive system. The cycles of fertility are completely mirrored in the moon cycle. That's a whole other conversation at another time. And if you guys want to learn more about that, you can follow me because I talk about that a lot. But just so you know, the moon is always mirroring for the cycles of fertility. And because of that, when we can start to understand the moon's phases and the moon's cycles, we can start to get back to what I was talking about before, that forward vector motion. We can live in sync with this cycle of creation and destruction on a monthly basis that touches on the entire universe in a very concrete way. So one of the most favorite things I love to do is to guide people through how to work with lunar cycles. So each month we have a new moon, we have a full moon, we have a waxing cycle, we have a waning cycle. And from a productivity standpoint, and from an evidence-based science standpoint, again, because this isn't peer-reviewed science-based literature, This is how our psychology syncs up with the cosmos. I really recommend starting to just, even in your calendar, start to mark down new moons and full moons and just track how you feel. On the most basic level, start to just pay attention to, oh, is it a new moon? How do I feel? Or it's a full moon? How do I feel? And do it for a couple months and see if there's a cycle. Like, oh, I actually feel really energized at a new moon and I feel dead to the world at a full moon, or vice versa. And see if you can start to make the connections between what's going on in your life and those two basic turning points in the moon cycle. Now, every new moon will happen in the sign that the sun's in, and every full moon will happen in the opposite sign that the sun's in. So if you start to pay attention to the moon's phases, you're going to learn the zodiac in an embodied way, not in an intellectual way. And that will start to activate your astrological knowledge as well. But new moons are said to be times, and I've experimented with it for almost 20 years now, where we can plant seeds and plant new intentions and begin new projects with quite successfully. And full moons tend to be times where the universe reveals to us what might be in our blind spot, or gives us a really good time to review. I know myself enough to know that at full moons, I have my worst sleep of the month. But I'm also, if I need to do a 12 to 14-hour day, which sometimes as an entrepreneur happens, I do really well with that at the time of the full moon. Whereas at the new moon, I can't grind like that at the time of the new moon. I don't even want to. But so I've learned to chunk my work in ways that works with the lunar rhythms around when my peak creativity happens versus when my need for more internal time will happen. And I'm really clear that for me, new moons are a time of a little bit more internal, less socializing, more communicating with what I need, setting intentions, whereas full moons can be more robust. And I can push myself way harder at a full moon than I can a new moon with next to no side effects. So that's an example of the way that we can practically apply a new and full moon regimen in our lives. It's much more complex than that. But I really firmly believe that you guys are your own experts. And to start to chart some of this on your own to see how it impacts you. To even start to chart, okay, the sun's in Sagittarius, the sun's in Capricorn, the sun's in Aquarius. So if I'm going to plan my business and my year using astrology, what are great things I can do for my business when the sun's in Sag? What are great things I can do for my business when the sun's in Capricorn, in Pisces, in Gemini? And even bringing that wisdom, even though it's pretty basic, it's so profound. It's really profound. Because if you remember what I said about each of those signs, they all have genius. So what if in March or in April, we do use that time to really think about what do we want to create? Where do we want to go? And then we use the time that the sun's in Taurus to be like, okay, how do we make this really sustainable? And then we use the time in Gemini of like, how can I market this? How can I bring more eyeballs to this? We use the timing for Cancer, like, how do I care for my long-term financial security and onward? And even bringing that awareness in is a way that you'll immediately, it's almost like eating seasonally, you'll start to feel in sync. Does that make sense?
Love it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to do some charts. Yeah, so it's 3:24. I can go really fast and do a few charts. But do I have your permission to maybe go 5 minutes over?
Fine with me. Yeah. And if anyone has to drop off, this is being recorded. So don't worry. If you have to cut out, that's no problem. We have chart info from a few of us. So Jen, feel free, just go through. And if you're willing to go 5 minutes over, we can definitely stay.
Sure.
So if somebody joined who you haven't put in your birth information, feel free to do that in the chat, just in case.
Yeah. So I see this note from you too. Can you tell everyone where to look up your charts? Yes. So you can look up your chart on astro.com, cafeastrology.com. Ask Jenny, put that in there. I love both those sites. Love, love, love. Okay. So I'm going to actually just share my screen. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. And we're going to start with Caitlin. Is that okay, Caitlin?
Sure. Did you see I ran downstairs to look at my birth time. I found it.
Okay, so tell me what your birth time is.
3:38 p.m.
So Caitlin, I have you June 20th, 1986, 3:38 p.m., Columbus, Ohio.
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is a great way. So I'm running this chart in SolarFire, which is like a professional astrology chart system. You don't need this. You can do this on astro.com or cafeastrology.com, like Jenny said. But what's great about this is that it's going to immediately show us your birth chart. So what I'm looking at here is the information we put in over here. You can see that it's a tropical Placidus mean node chart. This is just fancy astrology stuff for saying it's like a typical Western astrology chart. And I'm looking at where was the sun the moment she took her first breath, the sun being her core identity. I'm looking at where the moon was the moment she took her first breath, the moon being what our emotional needs are. And I'm looking at the constellation on the eastern horizon based on the longitude and latitude and the moment she took her first breath. And that's her rising sign. Now, I don't look at rising signs as the mask you're wearing to the world. I look at them as this, what you're rising to, who are you becoming, basically the soul of your chart. So if we look at Caitlin's chart, we immediately know she was born on the full moon. She's a Gemini sun, and she's a Sagittarius moon. So inherent in who she is this polarization, Gemini, communicator, thinker, fast talker, idea woman. But on the other side of this, she's like, go big or go home. Let's evangelize thoughts. Let's spread thoughts. Let's be the beacon of optimism. Let's make things real in the world, right? So we see that here with her son in Gemini. Now, if she was born just a little bit later, she would have been a Cancer. So some people will say that this is a cusp sun sign. I don't believe in cusp sun signs because I believe you are where you are. And she's a Gemini, even though she's just Gemini 29 degrees and there's only 30 degrees in a zodiac sign. All zodiac signs are 30 degrees and she's 29 degrees. So she's the last degree of Gemini. In my opinion, I don't see any Cancer there. I just see all Gemini, right? Though she has her Mercury in Cancer. She has Cancerian ways about her. She's deeply empathetic and kind and generous about others. Her core identity, according to this chart, is Gemini. Her constellation on the eastern horizon the moment she took her first breath is Libra. So this whole chart has strong Libra overtones. Libra being the sign of fairness, justice, and relationship. And I would just say, Caitlin, just in this very brief moment of talking to you, you are an incredibly insightful thinker, speaker, communicator. You have an incredible sense of discipline, which is not very Sagittarius or Gemini or Libra. It shows up in a different aspect of your chart, and it probably comes through something that you've unlearned in your life through the maternal lineage of your family, from mom, something you've had to either compensate for, or there was something that came in where it was like there was a lot of pressure on you. And so you have a really disciplined sense of self. So you tie this all together, and there's a lot of writing, there's a lot of promoting that can be done for you. This year is actually a great year for you to make some money. So I don't know what you have profitability lined up, but you can recoup quite a bit this year. And then just so you guys get the anatomy of the chart, this is the ascendant. These are all the houses, right? I'm not going to go through houses. It's a little bit more advanced than what we're covering today. But this appears her career line. This is her fame line, and it's in Cancer. So with your career line in Cancer, and if we were doing a deeper session, we could talk about that quite a bit, but I'm just going to say that following the moon is really important to you professionally. Perhaps it could help you quite a bit, because it's ruled by the moon. Your career line's ruled by the moon, which is to say, staying in touch with your feminine rhythms, your feminine cycles, building safety and security, caring for other people. It's a very affectionate chart. It's probably all deeply associated with how you shine in the world. Make sense?
Super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do this. Stephanie. Are you here, Stephanie?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
So is this correct? September 10th, 1986, 8:49 p.m. Dover?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So here we have Stephanie. She's born on the waxing quarter moon. She has a sun in Virgo, moon in Sagittarius, and Aries rising. So sun in Virgo is like the systemization, the organization, the person who's really here. I call Virgo the protectors of purity. They understand things in their finest essence, can find the flaw, and then rearrange it to make it like better, healthier. Virgos get the bad rap of being like perfectionistic. But Virgos really are just here in service. On the shadow side, when Virgos are too mired in the details, they can become overly perfectionistic, and it can really actually disrupt their digestion and their health in that way. So keeping a big picture perspective is really important for you. But I think you actually have that down with your moon, your emotional need being in the sign of Sagittarius, which is all about travel, right? So aren't you phoning in from London?
Yeah, I live in London and I bounce around work-wise from New York to Bangkok and London. So
And she writes a travel newsletter, let me add.
yes. and work breaking into the travel blogging, travel writing thing. So
Well, that's going to go really well this year. You have 3 planets in Sagittarius, Jupiter's in Sagittarius. It's your emotional need is in Sagittarius, but you also have a really stalwart career line. I mean, you have your career lines up here in Capricorn, and you have Mars right on your career line. Capricorn's a very traditional career. It's like here in business and banking and, these things that are very like traditional and measurable in some way. And that's your career line. So I think you actually have a lot of traditional components in some ways, but you're here to totally do things your own way. At the same time, you have your rising sign in Aries. Aries initiates and starts. So for you, I will say exercise is so important. Are you getting enough of it?
not right now, but it's definitely affected because with so much travel, I haven't had a routine. And so, but it's completely affected. I've noticed that recently. So
yeah, the moon in Sagittarius needs activity. And the same is true for you, Caitlin. The moon in Sagittarius needs like physical activity, like soul cycle level of like, spin it out and smile. But that Aries rising for you, Stephanie, even more so, it like double up, doubles down with that Virgo fastidiousness. It brings your nervous system down a notch.
yes. Yeah, that meditation critical. So thank you.
So this is, basic introduction to chart reading. Let's go to Tracy's chart. Is Tracy here?
Yes.
Hi,
Hello.
Tracy.
Hi.
July 18th, 86. Did I get this right?
No, it's 68. I'm a lot older than all of you. Did I put 86?
No, I maybe not. I don't know. I was just translating from the chat, and I can make mistakes that way. So, but July 18th, 1968?
Yes.
And then 10:03 p.m.?
It's either 10:01 or 10:03. I don't know how much of it.
And then Skokie, Illinois?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just move this bar so I can see. So, love, you have a Cancer sun, a Taurus moon. What a beautiful blend. And Pisces rising. So Cancer sun is really here. Like Cancers want their abundance to have abundance. And they can scare themselves silly when they think that their abundance is like somewhere not totally secure. So part of this chart is like you to get really grounded and to just trust that you're always safe. Like maybe even like an affirmation, like I'm safe and secure, or something like that could be really helpful for you. But beyond that, like the real call of this chart is so creative. You have 3 planets in Cancer, Sun, Mars, and Mercury, all in the 5th house of creativity, with your moon answering to your moon. So the moon's the ruler of Cancer. The moon is exalted, loves to be in Taurus. Taurus is so grounded and so nurtured. This is a chart that has like a lot of what I'm going to call yum yum, like things that like sensually feel good, like warm, nourishing meals, hot baths, fresh sheets, like that sort of delight of the sensual expression of being alive. with this Pisces rising being, what are you rising to? It's all very spiritual. It's very nuanced. It's like about, I mean, this is a very generous and a very generous chart. It's very connected to oneness in that like almost metaphysical way. You have your career lines in Sagittarius. So this is another chart that's about big picture ideas, almost like a global influence of such. With Jupiter coming over your career line, this is a really great year for career. When we look at where Jupiter lives in your chart, it's in Virgo, and you have 3 planets in Virgo. So I'm just going to say, I mean, not knowing you and just briefly looking at your chart, to be really mindful of when you can be hard on yourself or not necessarily believe in yourself. Your job is to be everyone's best cheerleader, but especially your own. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. You read my clock or my chart in this case, but yeah.
Yeah. And then you have this, so this is called a yod. She has this yod from her moon to her Mars pointing at her career line. So this is like, it's like a fated aspect in career. So whatever you're up to this year can be quite big. It might actually be a part of your deeper soul calling unfolding. It might have taken you a long time to get here. It doesn't mean that this is like, there's some sort of explosive growth this year that's so obvious. It might mean like just subtle things are aligning, and over time, all those subtle alignments lead into something big. But I would pay attention to what's percolating for you, particularly the first Q1. You'll get a good sense of it in Q1, quick off the bat this year, and then you'll work with it throughout the whole year to refine it. And because you're lunar ruled as well with the Cancerian influence, paying attention to the cycles of the moon might be really helpful for you.
Yes, I think it would be.
So for you guys wanting to learn more about the cycles of the moon, I have, if you go to my website, which is jenniferracioppi.com, if you put your name in, you'll get my free downloadable freebie. It'll kind of give you more information on the cycles of the moon and the zodiac. Okay, so I kind of poorly put Michael's chart in here.
He's here too. We can tell you.
Do you want to take a look at it, Michael?
I think he's probably on mute. Yeah, I'll tell him to unmute.
I mean, talk about Sagittarius. I don't know if this is right. Oh, wait, I might not have his chart in here at all because I have July 18, 1986. What is his birthday?
You want to say, Michael?
Hi, Michael.
I know, he's right there. August 20th, 1985.
Yeah, so this is all wrong.
And then it's 1985. And then Beirut, Lebanon. Michael, are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Do you want to say hi to everybody? He's
hi, everyone.
overhearing my end of the momentum conversations. So I'm happy to have you here.
And is it 6:50 p.m.?
It's 6:50, yeah.
Okay, cool. I had something right. I don't know what I did wrong there, but you've had your chart looked at before with Jenny and all.
Well, he only recently figured out his exact birth time. So for 2.5 years, I thought he had a different rising sign, which is just like crazy. And then he's in his own deep dive on astrology right now. So it's
right.
That's why he's
so fun. Yeah. So what we have here is a Leo sun, a Libra moon, and an Aquarius rising. So this is a really fun chart. Leo, you have 3 planets in Leo. You have Mercury, Mars, and the sun in Leo. Leo being a sign that's really here to inspire leadership and growth and strength. You were born with Mercury stationing, either coming into a retrograde or coming out of a retrograde, which I don't know if is so relevant for this conversation, but it's something to play with as you do your deep dive. I was like, oh, what does that mean? And how does that relate? Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you're born with a Mercury retrograde or Mercury station, it may mean that it takes a little while for you to find your thoughts, your opinions, or your ideas. But when you do, they're really, really, really grounded. Or it might just mean you have an easier time in those retrograde periods. Anyway, it's a much different conversation than what we're having now, but I'll just point that out.
Kind of like both, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then your moon is in Libra. Remember, Libra is the sign of justice, fairness, balance. It's also the sign that's ruled by Venus. So moon in Libra is like a need for beauty, harmony, balance. It's a need for relationship. I happen to know that you're also an artist. so I will say that there's that too. You know, obviously Moon in Libra is art driven. But your rising sign is in Aquarius, which is revolution, evolution, and change. It's deeply humanitarian driven. So I'm just going to say that, you know, this is a chart that disrupts things, disrupts perhaps the family lineage. We were having a deeper conversation. I'd have all sorts of questions about dad, right? Because Leo can indicate a strong paternal influence one way or the other. And when we look at that in sync with Aquarius, it may mean that you're doing things differently than how your paternal line has done things traditionally. Aquarius is a very global sign. It's very much here around enhancing life for others, breaking down old systems, breaking down old patterns. But the one thing I will say about Aquarius is it actually does like tradition too. It's not like throw all tradition out. It's just, why are we doing traditions that no longer serve us? You know, so it's about evolutionizing and revolutionizing tradition, but it has an attunement to tradition as well. When you look at this all in sync with your career line, your midheaven being in Sagittarius, it's a pretty optimistic year ahead. Jupiter, the planet of good luck, good fortune, is already in your 10th house right now. So that would mean that things are unfolding for you to help you take professional ambitions to the next level. But ultimately, Jupiter is going to, this is an aspect called the trine. Jupiter is going to trine Mercury. Jupiter is going to trine your Mars. Jupiter is going to trine your Sun, which is to say that all the actions in your life around getting good news and making your ambition stride in the right direction and bringing notoriety to your persona have this like almost like handshake from Jupiter. It's not like Jupiter does anything massive for you, but it's better to shake hands with Jupiter than to not, right? It's like there's a sense of like just things shine, things sparkle a little bit more than they normally would, especially with Jupiter simultaneously in your 10th house of career. So from a business perspective for you, this next year is about taking risks, honestly. Risk on behalf of your dreams and your goals. Does that make sense?
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, guys. So yeah, we're about almost 15 minutes over.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's so, can you guys, like, it's so fascinating to see how different everybody's charts are. And then we all have familiarity with each other, momentum. So to hear you talk about like each other who we know and love and know their energy from just interacting in momentum and see it confirmed in the chart from you who's never met anybody here is so fun. And thank you, Jen, for going over. JenniferRacioppi.com, everybody. She's really incredible. And Jen, are you still doing individual readings at all in this upcoming year? I know you're working on your book.
Yeah, I am. I currently have a wait list. So if anyone's like, I need to have that done, you can just go to my website and send like a little contact me form and we'll get you on the wait list. The wait list isn't terribly long, to be totally honest. Yeah, just
great. And her newsletter is really solid as well. She sends it, of course, with the new and the full moon twice a month. And it's always really beautifully written and specific. So Jen, thank you so much for being here and for going over. And Momoers who are on the live call, thank you for sharing your birth chart info and giving us a peek into your inner personality. And for those of you watching the recording, thanks for being here, even asynchronously. So thanks again, Jen, and we'll post the recording as soon as we can.
Have the most amazing solstice, everyone. Happy New Year, and get ready for 2019. I think it's going to be a very different and fun, energizing year for business.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Bye, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.